So Tucker, what do you think about the idea of a no-deal Brexit?
I think people aren't quite standing close enough to the fire, and they're not feeling the heat. To quote Bill Hicks, I don't think most people have the faintest understanding about how things like tomatoes, lettuces, basic foodstuffs arrive in the shops, and the process that goes with that, and where it comes from, and how that all happens, and the intricate computer systems that monitor purchases in every Sainsbury's, so that when we hit the point when a final lettuce has been sold anywhere in the country, an order is automatically put in for another lot of lettuces that will arrive just in time to the depot to be shipped out to all of the stores just in time. Supermarkets are getting, big supermarkets might be getting multiple deliveries a day, maybe a delivery an hour, based on what's been sold. And all of that depends upon the seamless movement of goods, largely through Calais, Dover. Not that Mr. Dominic Raab apparently understood how important that was. He was only Brexit secretary after all.
Imagine being the Brexit secretary and only realising that we're an island halfway through the process.
I believe what he said was something to the effect of, "It has come to my attention," or something like that. I'm like, what the fuck, man?
And we're really, really in danger now of a no-deal Brexit. We're really, really dangerously close to a no-deal Brexit, because Theresa May has made such a fucking balls up of it. So, with regards to the confidence vote, I honestly didn't know. There was nothing good to wish for. If I'd have thought for 1 second that somebody better than her would be put in charge of the Conservative Party, then I would have been praying for her to lose the vote.
When you're talking about there's no suitable replacement for May.
No, it's not that there's no suitable replacement for May, it's that there's no suitable replacement that the Conservative Party would vote for.
Well, yes. But either way, it does show you the absolute lack of understanding and forward thinking and planning that 1/3 of the Tories actually possesses. Because why on earth would you stage a rebellion against a leader without having a suitable candidate to replace them? They lost the vote. They lost the whole thing within less than a day. So even within that tiny third of the Tory party, they're not even all unanimously together, because there clearly isn't a battle plan there. And I just found that fucking fascinating. The way this Jacob Rees-Mogg chap that likes to present himself as this sort of incredibly intelligent man could not pull off something that seemed so fucking simple as that.
Yes, he appears to have not been taught how to sort of count to 160 when he was at Eton.
But there is a theory that May's sympathisers were the ones who fired in the letters because they knew that they would win it.
And that gave them a year then if they
And that's a
failed
year.
under
Theresa
Tory
May
party
cannot
years.
get booted out now for a year, so they triggered it early. Whereas the Brexiteers would probably have rather waited another little while until they were sure they had the support.
Yeah,
So that does actually kind of make sense.
Because Conservative Party rules are that if you put forward a vote of no confidence like that and then lose it, you can't bring another one for a year.
Yes.
Which means now the Conservative Party cannot oust Theresa May before we pass through the end of the Article 50 period. We're now stuck with Theresa May, and we don't have now, because of the fixed term parliament system, we don't have the ability to bring down the government simply by the House calling a vote of no confidence. There'd still have to be an act to dissolve Parliament, and because the Labour Party are a complete fucking shambles. I mean, the embarrassment of the fact that with all of this chaos, if they had their shit together, they'd be 20 points ahead in the polls, but they're not. Nobody is properly in charge here. The deal that May has brought is terrible. It's much, much worse. Much worse than, I mean, it was always going to be worse than being in the EU. The thing that drives me nuts is that I think if on day one, Theresa May had said, okay, we need an EFTA-style agreement or a Switzerland-style agreement, although you don't want a Switzerland-style agreement, because if you ever look, like, Switzerland has got, like, the most ad hoc fucking thing. It's mental. But anyway, try working out whether or not you need to charge VAT to Switzerland or not. I fucking dare you. But if we'd gone at it politely, deferentially, I'd said, we're sorry about this, but this is the situation that we're in. This is what we want. What do we need to do to achieve it? Everybody that's here already can stay. There'll be no dicking about on that front. We would like you to say the same for the people who are living abroad. What can we do? And Europe would have gone, cool, okay, let's do that. Let's sort out an EFTA-style deal. But instead, no, we had to be fucking empire, didn't we? We had to be fucking... Brexit means Brexit. We're going to have a red, white and blue Brexit. We're going to use the people who are here as pawns, blah, blah, blah. And Europe went, well, fuck you then. And why wouldn't they? The stupidity, the arrogance, and the fucking shambles of it all is beyond... I mean, I'm beyond anger. I'm into some new fucking plasma-like level of rage at the incoherence and stupidity of it all. And I'm just telling you now, come April next year, there's fucking not going to be tomatoes in the supermarket all the time. I'm just saying it now.
Do you want to go full apocalypse for this? Because I've got a theory it's going to be bad.
I think it's going to be bad. People were calling the fucking police when Kentucky didn't have any chicken. What do you think they're going to be like when there's no food in the supermarkets?
My working theory on this, and I don't know much about anything, is that the population size of Scotland is relatively small. So I think
be fine.
By comparison, and I do underline by comparison, we may do better than England. But
we're
if you
also
consider
less keen on the vegetables, so
true,
we'll be fine.
We'll just drink our way through it. That's probably what we'll end up doing. But if you do consider that, is our population of Scotland 6 million roughly? Is that right?
Yeah, that's roughly
so. I mean, what's the population of London then alone?
About 12.
Yeah, 12.
So okay, let's consider that for a moment. That's one English city. I think that if, like, the Morrisons down the road from me started to run a bit low on food, I don't think there would be enormous panic. I think the minute that people go in England, in London particularly, go in and either there's no fucking food or the cost of said food that is there is astronomically higher, given the fact this was the country that kicked off over their student loans and properly fucking rioted over that. Like, actually fucking... I think they threw a fire extinguisher off a roof and it killed somebody. I mean, like, they all went fucking batshit nuts. That was over Nick Clegg. This is Nick Clegg times 1,000.
I mean, let's be honest about this. Doesn't Nick Clegg make you feel like throwing a fire extinguisher off a building?
But this is what I mean. So, like, I don't want to be the guy that says it's going to be fucking riots and chaos. But we're kind of getting to the point now where I can't see how it's not going to end up in riots and chaos. And they're saying, like, proudly, like, we're going to get the military in. There's not that many people in the British military versus the population of the country / a city. I mean, if these people fucking kick off, the British public go fucking bananas, which in England they've got a track record of doing, this is gonna get seriously fucking ugly quite fast. Because, as you say, it's not just the price rises, it's the logistics of getting food supplies in. The cost of fuel is going to be fucked. Can people get to and from work? Because if they can't afford the fuel, if they can't afford to get there, how is this all going to happen? Look at ScotRail already is fucked. And it's running, apparently, allegedly, at optimum level at the moment. What happens if 15 people don't turn up for work in one day as a result of what could be going on here? The whole country would ground to a fucking halt. Yeah. But this is just like... the thing, the turning point for me in all of this, when I entered the plasma hate, as we're now calling it, that you now entered as well, it was when the headline, "We are stockpiling blood," came up. And I just thought, that's we're so fucked. There was an interview where Theresa May was asked the question, "Is it true we are stockpiling drugs and blood?" And she was like, "Yes, but don't worry about it." And I go, the minute the government is stockpiling blood, drugs, and has a military plan being put in place, that is a warning sign. One, that it's gonna happen, because you would not do all that planning unless there was a significant chance, because the military ain't got no fucking money, to begin with. So if you're putting that emphasis on it, it's gonna occur. And it's gonna occur.
Yeah, I do. I like how quickly it fell apart as well. Like, it was like, it's gonna be a Brexit bonanza, and then like 2 weeks later, there's going to be adequate food. Then 2 weeks later, it's like, we're stockpiling drugs. It's all going to shit. Oh no.
You know why the Tories want to stockpile blood, though, right? It's because they drink it. It's kind of hard to like take a step back and look at all this stuff like dispassionately, like, while it's all going on. It's just like, it does seem chaos. But one thing I was thinking about is like, why is it so hard for someone to not be part of the EU?
I don't think that's the problem. The issue is that we joined a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a ball of string that someone's been tying knots in for decades. And then someone just goes, all right, within a period of so many months, I want this to be a completely clear string. And it's like, that's not viable. If they'd honestly said, look, we're going to leave the EU, but it's probably going to take upwards of 5 years to get things back to where we started with, that would have been honest. But the fact they've tried to deliver something that is just literally impossible. Who was the tweet? They said it was like she tried to sell the country a submarine made of cheese or something like this. That was the analogy for Brexit. And it's like that, where when you're asking, like, what is it about the European Union? Well, the countries that aren't in it, they're just not in it. And I think if they were to join it, I think the same thing would happen in reverse, that it would take a very long time for them to implement all the EU stuff. So I think you could tiptoe in and go, oh, fuck this, and tiptoe out quite comfortably. It's the fact that we've been in it for more or less the onset of it, and therefore to try and undo several decades worth of stuff in a matter of months is just fucking ludicrous. And this should have been obvious to everybody, but it wasn't.
It's like trying to reverse entropy. You can't unstir a cup of coffee. You can't undissolve the sugar in a cup of coffee. Okay? It used to be that food came into Britain with tariffs, through a custom system that, stuff had to be checked. And it used to be the case that there's an awful lot less in the shops, an awful lot less variety than there is now. But now we've got fucking Thai chicken pizzas and God knows what else going on, and all of these things come from all across the world in vastly complicated systems that have been enabled by seamless movement of goods. And all of the businesses that provide food for 60 million people on an island, or a series of islands, rely on this spider web of complex transit routes that things move quickly and seamlessly through. And what we've been trying to do is in 2 years sever all of that whilst retaining the ability of all of those things to move seamlessly.
The fact that it is complicated is not a negative, because that seems to be a lot of the kind of Brexiteer mentality of like, it's got too big, it's too this, it's too that. It's like, no, it's miraculous that humans have actually been able to orchestrate this to create a world where this is all fucking possible. It's just because you're stupid and can't understand it and we can't break it down to your level is no reason to blow it the fuck up. The fact that we've built this is fucking miraculous, and it should be celebrated. So the fact that it is complicated, I guess if that's intellectually threatening to you, maybe you would react negatively to it. I don't fucking understand it, but I'm very fucking appreciative that it's there and that other people are smart enough to understand it and can provide me the life that I have as a result of it. So I think that's where a lot of the Brexiteer mentality tends to come from, is the fact that it's this perception of it's too big, it's too complicated. I want things simple. Go back to the way things were done simply before, even though they were worse. So just for the sake of someone's intellectual insecurity, we're making everyone's lives worse. But just because you're talking about the complexity of it, I just want to make the point that that's not a bad thing.
I'm not sure if I totally agree with that. I mean, there's definitely a naivety in like a lot of the hard Brexity folk that, you know, it is like a ball of wool that's had loads of knots in it. To untangle that, it's going to take a lot of time and massive amount of effort. And, you know, if we hard Brexit tomorrow, it's going to be a disaster. But at the same time, if you do take a step back and look at what, you know, the growth of the regulatory state over the last 30 years, it has been quite a massive change in the way trade is done throughout the world. And it's not just been in the EU that's happened, it's in the States as well. Everything's been centralised to the federal government, whereas before individual states would have a lot more of their own say and control over how they do stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily, we should say that is totally good. I think, you know, especially folk who are, you know, into like secession and, you know, Scotland leaving the UK and whatever, if you want to have your own way of doing things, having this, you know, massive governmental system, it is the government of the EU who decide what our regulations are, then you don't have as much say over how you actually operate. And there's no easy way to get out of that, because like you said, it makes things easier within that unit, but then without that, you know, beyond the limits of that union, it becomes
we
much
may be
harder.
talking in cross purposes. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that, but what I'm saying is if there's a viable argument to suggest that secession simplification makes things better, I think that's fine. But I think that's the missing bit of the argument. It's the complicated thing is clearly working better than the simple thing. Well, I mean, because even you had conceded that, like, your libertarian future will be Mad Max. It's not really functioning for society, and I think that's the missing bit. With Brexit, it was all we were voting against this big thing, but nobody could actually articulate what the alternative was going to be. And if someone can say to me, well, here's the really simple version that works for everyone and it is better, I'll fucking vote for it. But no one has done that. So it's just about, look how big and complicated and shitty this thing is, but no one's filled in that blank. And I've always had the opinion that if you criticise something, you have to offer an alternative suggestion. You can't just be the person who going, that's shit, which is what Brexiteers basically are. Like, because they can't create something of their own. And
Well,
truth amazing, yeah.
The closest answer we've got just now is like to move to like EFTA. So that's, you know, separating you out from some of the parts of the EU that might not be great, but you're still within it. You know, you're still within that web. I think the other point to note about the regulatory element of the EU is that it's stopping both the left and the right from doing what they want. You know, Corbyn is as much against the EU because it would stop him from, you know, nationalising a lot of the things he'd want to do. And then on the right, you know, your Jacob Rees-Mogg crowd, they would want to go much further in terms of free market economics, and the EU stops them from doing that. So it's not like a left-right thing. It does cut right across.
And this is kind of it, like you're talking about, like pissing off the left or pissing off the right, and the complicated nature of it. It's like the reason I think that we're in this absolute fucking mess right now is because there was absolutely, first of all, nothing that actually defined what Brexit was going to be. When we came to the vote, it was just like, do we leave? Cool. What does that look like? Is it EFTA? Is it Canada? Is it hard Brexit? And then afterwards, every Brexiteer was just like, everyone voted for my version of it, which I never actually spoke about until now. And I know what I voted for. And so, and then, you know, that way, the other problem, I think, and this is something that has been a real issue with Brexit, is like, I get problems with the EU. I got a lot of sympathies to the Brexit argument to a degree. I think the EU has become super neoliberal. I think it has become really problematic in how it approaches even human rights within it, when it's easier to not disturb certain member states, Spain, and there is a real issue there. But the problem, I think, is that Brexit, instead of being defined around that and being defined around maybe like how Corbyn would approach it, of nationalising things and actually taking back control, instead it was defined with this nasty anti-immigrant rhetoric, and that's what Brexit has become, even if there was a time where it could have been something else.
Yeah. It's some parallels almost with the 2016 the US election with Trump, like, because a lot of the Trump supporters that voted for him, no one could really define what the fuck Trump really was, again out with of immigration and really like simplistic things along those lines. But I think there is some parallel with the Brexit vote in the sense that the left, so I'm now thinking catboid because the term catboiding is now what I use to describe people who don't bother to vote. But a lot of Hillary people, or not Hillary, liberals rather, they catboided because they were like, well, it's not going to be Bernie, fuck, we're not going because Hillary Clinton's an arsehole, which is true. I'm not disputing that. I'm not a Hillary fan whatsoever. But in the same way that Cat Boyd was, I think actually quite reasonably, to be honest, as much as she got a lot of hate for not voting, I could really understand why she didn't. Because she was saying like, well, I don't want to vote Brexit because then I feel like I'm with the UKIP nutter crowd. But equally, just like you said there, I have got issues with the European Union, so I don't really want to feel like I'm voting for the European Union. And I think that the Hillary Clinton voters were very much the same, where if you were a strong Bernie supporter, you just didn't vote because you were like, well, I don't want it like that. And I think if it ever went to a people's vote, for example, I think that's what you would see is people like Catboy would come out and then vote Remain, whereas they might not have done previously. So I think the reason why we ended up in this situation was people purely voting against something. And even in Scotland, I think a lot of people up here were not necessarily even voting for the European Union. They were voting against Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson and the Tories. That vote, when we voted Remain, as much as it's kind of been spun into this, like, we love the EU, but if you actually asked your average person on the street of Glasgow, what does the European Union do? Go. They wouldn't be able to fucking tell you. They would not know if you actually push them a lot of the economic policies, what it actually does day to day. They wouldn't know.
I know. I would agree with that, but I mean, certainly, I have big issues with common agricultural policy, with the way sort of fishing and things like that. I've got all sorts of issues. You know, the way Greece was treated, all sorts of problems. But the absolute deciding point in my mind was that at the moment we are subject to the whims of Westminster, but Westminster is restrained by Europe, and I would never vote to remove a restraining influence on Westminster, because all you're doing is leaving yourself much more at the mercy of Westminster, who have demonstrated themselves to be time and time again a bunch of cunts. So, from that point of view, there was that made the decision very, very, very easy for me.
Yeah, I mean, look how quickly we got round to chatting about chlorinated chicken. Something that within the EU is just like, that's not going to happen, and then outside of it, the UK is just like, oh, this could. We can make some cash off this, and suddenly that's on the table and being discussed. Exactly.
Chicken a la domestos.
Yeah, thank God. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The EU at least were, for their faults, sort of like the Lib Dems at one point, holding the Conservatives back from maybe being their worst selves, at least tangentially. Yeah.
Just comparing the Brexit to the Trump thing, it's worth comparing them because they're both ultimately products of Russian propaganda influence.
And the peak of human stupidity, probably, hopefully on this planet. Because my big hope is that was the peak. That it was the first time we had two major referendum and an election back to back when social media had a major influence.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time humans tried to do this, and then we realised we massively fucked it up. So then the fallout has been humans going, we cannot let this happen again, and there's been a real kind of concerted effort by a lot of people on the planet to try and correct that.
One, two, five, four.
Referendum came, but she abstained. Made a good point, but earned disdain. And a vote to leave, then a leap in the void. A socialist girl they call Catboy. 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 Didn't bother to vote, but she is Catboy. Out on the road or back in town, a journalist put Catboy down. Voting red or voting yes. What she said is anyone's guess. Catboy. Catboy. Didn't bother to vote, but she is Catboy.
I fucked it there. I played D minor rather than A minor.
I don't care. That's the best we're fucking gonna get out of this thing. Catboy didn't vote. Catboy didn't vote.